Okay, so to finish up this slide, I'd just like to finish off with a couple of points. If you'll notice that social affiliation, who you are, is better than how good of a soldier you are. So if you're a completely loyal religious fanatic, and that's better than just being someone that's completely competent. So this is kind of the prerequisite. And if you'll notice that it's really not the best way to deal with promotion. As we said, by winter, the Iraqis, they're advanced far enough to have defensive positions, but they're also kind of at risk of being stuck in the swamps off to the south. So we're going to see this as we move forward with the Battle of Suzangard. So this is going to be like the first big major battle where both sides are ready to fight. So at this time, there's political pressure on the actual Iranian president, so Bandi Sadr, um, who was actually the president versus the Ayatollah Khomeini, even though the Ayatollah Khomeini had a lot of the power. So the Ayatollahs, saying, Allah's on our side, we should attack, we have the moral high ground, that kind of stuff. We have, people who have their keys to heaven who are ready to go. So he keeps pressuring and pressuring, and finally, um, the president, Bandi Sadr, he finally attacks. He calls for the attack in January, which is kind of a horrible mistake to do because it's in the middle of the rainy season in this area. Even though you think of this being in the middle of the desert, the rainy season is from November to March, and there's going to at least be rain in the south, which is going to make it swampy, especially in the swamp. So, continued, the Iranians, they made the mistake of broadcasting their tactical plans. So what they're going to do, their battle plans, over the radio, and they don't try to disguise it with any kind of code or anything like that. So the Iraqis, they know what's coming because it's kind of easy to have someone to take that on. However, when the Iranians attack, they think that they're going to be able to capture Khuzestan and kind of reshift the balance of power. And even though the Iranians they had some initial success, it became very clear once they hit the defensive positions of the Iraqis that they're going to be stalled, especially when the rains come. So the Iraqis they're able to push them back, even though the Iraqis they have very poor troop effort. So their troops they're awful. They won't fight. They're scared. They're not very courageous. They're not willing to do what it takes to win a battle. So even though the Iraqi troops aren't very good, the Iranians they're stuck in the rain and they can't really move forward. So it becomes kind of this, the blind leading the stupid kind of. You see some pictures from this war. You notice that it's very very swampy over here on the right, leaving the tanks to be stuck. You see other aspects where these Iraqi troops they hit a stopping point and they're just going to bail. So the importance of this battle, the Battle of Suzangard, is that the Iran they're never going to be able to rebuild the armed forces that they lost. So if they lost a tank, they don't have anybody else in the Western world who's going to be able to sell them a tank. Same with aircrafts. If they lose an aircraft, they're stuck. Sorry, they can't replace it. So this is going to put the president Bandi Sadr in kind of an awkward position. And the Ayatollah Khomeini, he's going to be able to take the more political power than he already had, and make him even better and more powerful. So Iraq, the thing is, this turns into kind of a stalemate. So even though Iraq wins kind of tactically, they have this defensive victory, they're not going to be able to counterattack and really push the Iranians. If they had better command structure, they could have easily, counterattacked and pushed the war and made it go the other way. But because they have poor troops, they're just not going to be able to do that. So the end result is a stalemate where they win tactically, but they don't really win anything else. So by 1981, the Organization of the Islamic Conference, they're going to try to broker a ceasefire. They realize that there's a war going on. nobody wins because this is a high oil area, which is going to make it tricky and difficult. So Iraq and Baghdad, they show some acceptance. They show some willingness to accept a ceasefire. They say, "Hey, we would rather have a ceasefire. We didn't really intend for this to be a long war anyway. If we could get out of it, that would be great." Iran, they see Baghdad kind of being eager to accept the ceasefire as a sign of weakness. They say, "Oh, they want a ceasefire. They must be struggling. They must be weak. So we're going to keep fighting until Iraq is all the way on the other side of the border. That Saddam Hussein is out, and they think that this will really help." So once Saddam realizes this, Saddam needs to regain his machismo and his manhood. So what he does is he tries to show his strength. So he orders an attack on Suzengard. But because he's not very good at military tactics, he thinks of himself as a military man, even though he isn't. The attack fails just kind of miserably, and it turns into a stalemate. In fact, it turns into very much so like a World War One, where they're in the trenches, they try to fight. Whenever one person attacks, the other country can kind of hold off that attack, and nobody is really willing to go above and beyond, and they're just stuck. They're kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere, and nobody can really get above and beyond, and that's why this war is going to last for 8 years. Human wave attacks. So we talked a little bit about this when we talked about the Pasdaran. So the Iranians, because they don't have like large scale weapons, they don't have tanks, they don't have as many airplanes as they would love to have. They don't have, cannons and that kind of stuff. What they do have is they have 4 times as many people in their country. So what they do is they have the Bazija or the Pasdaran troops, where they say, "Okay, we'll give you a weapon, and you maybe a functioning gun, maybe not. Maybe they'll give them a knife or something, and they'll just go put them in the front, and they'll say, 'You go.'" And they would go to kind of a weak point along the Iraqi front, and if they're going to attack it, then they could kind of take out that point. So if you can put thousands of people attacking one point, even if they're not very well armed, then eventually they're gonna be able to wear down the Iraqis. In a lot of instances, or in some instances, they're used to clear minefields, like we did with the activity, where they're just trying to make sure that the better troops, the more well trained troops, are there, and they're not gonna like actually step on a minefield. That the people that know how to use a weapon can be there to use the weapon. Thank you for listening, and then we will talk more about this in the coming days.